Okay, so for integrated math 1, in order to pass, I get the question like, can I get a list of assignments, or what is it that I have to do to pass for the semester? Due to COVID and all of the craziness, normally we would cover more content in a semester. However, we have taken it down to the bare minimum. Like, what do you absolutely have to know in order to be ready for second semester and beyond? So, what is an Empower is what you need to show proficiency on. And it's really 2 learning targets, and we've kind of built on those skills throughout the semester. This missing activities is kind of a summary of the assignments that you need, like a list of assignments. Now, they're not in order, so my recommendation that I've been telling you throughout the semester would be to go to your actual playlist, and anything that's in this playlist is what you should have done. If they have stars next to it, that means they are good, you are done. If it has like arrows, like some of you have arrows on it, that means that you would need to redo it or show proficiency on it. So if you took some quizzes and maybe you didn't pass those, the unit test can override those grades if you pass the unit test. Now, if you don't pass the unit test and you haven't passed the quizzes, then we need to find another way for you to show me that you understand the content. If there are clocks next to it, so you would notice that these assignments are the same missing assignments that are listed at the top of your Empower class. So these should match. For this week, these aren't marked missing yet, but this test review, which we're going to take a look at, I strongly recommend that you do that, because if you understand and you can do the test review, you're getting the correct answers, you should have no problem on the unit test. The unit test you should take before Friday, because if you don't do well on it, it still gives us another week for me to help you and you to show proficiency on those 2 targets. The unit test, just a little bit of information. This is all in the email that I sent you this week. It's 80 minutes. It is timed. There are only 27 questions, and there is a good chunk of it. I mean, like probably a third of the test, which is vocabulary. So it's open note. Make sure that you have those notes copied and ready to go. But those questions should be pretty short and allowing you more time for the ones that you do need to solve. Make sure you have all your resources ready to go before you start. So all your notes, have your notebook there, have everything copied, have your examples, anything that you need before you start, so you're not searching for stuff and wasting your time. Because if you run out of time and you don't pass, then you have to find another way to show that you understand the content. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Type in the chat at any point as I go. The big thing though is if you've done the majority of the assignments, if you're missing assignments, I would strongly recommend you do those first, because obviously that would be on the unit test. If you do the test review, you do well on that, you should be good to go. If you pass the unit test and you pass it this week, then the next week you're done. Like, I'm not going to give you additional stuff that you need to do. This is, you finished for the semester and you're good, unless you want to start on stuff for next semester. But I wanted to give you a little bit of buffer in case we need it. Okay. From that, remember extra help calendars here, and then everything that's been assigned for the semester is also in the pacing calendar. So please let me know what you need help with. Now for, actually, let's do this. Let's take a look at the review so you kind of see what it's about. So if you open it up, it's basically like a practice test. So a lot of the test questions, they're not the same test questions, but they are very closely related. If you open this up, it's going to take you to a test. So you are going to need paper and pencil to write down. The beginning part is review on vocabulary, inequalities, solving equations. It may ask you to explain. So like, what would be the best, like the first best step, and explain that, not just solving it. And that is part of what the test is about. Can you pick out the explanation that goes for that problem? Okay, now you say, okay, how do I know if I'm doing them correct? There is an answer key. Let me actually, so under step 2, answer key, don't just copy the answers. You want to actually do the work for it. And if you do the work, check your answer here. You can then take a picture and submit me your work. I can use that as evidence as well. Okay, but I would strongly recommend that you show all your work on a separate sheet of paper, take a picture, email it to me, or actually take a picture and attach it here. because I can use that as evidence for you if you like are close to passing the unit test, which leads to the last piece. When you take the unit test, show all your work, take a picture, email it to me, because like I said, if you're close to passing the unit test and you can email me your work and I can see, oh, you know what you're doing, you're just making negative mistakes or something like that, I can then go in and override your grade with that information. If you take the unit test and you're close to passing, but you send me no work, I can't give you any extra points. So that's how you can earn some extra credit, kind of, is by sending me your work and I can see like, yeah, you understand what you're doing, or no, you don't. All right. So for the remainder of the class, here's the plan, and I'm happy to do more problems with you. You can set up a meeting with me. I am going to do another review, or like for additional information, or to go over any problems from the review sheet on Wednesday from 8:45 to 9:45. And I will also record that and send it out if people show up. So I'm sure there'll be some people that will. With this, if you look on the right hand side there, so we're gonna go through 4 problems together, but I also listed out all the vocabulary that you need to know. All the definitions are given to you in the notes throughout the year. So at the beginning of the empowered activities where it says copy these notes, if you didn't copy the notes, I strongly recommend that you go back and do that, because the test is open note. You want to make sure you understand the content. You're not going to have time to look up and learn the content as you're taking the test, because you only have 80 minutes. But if you forget, like, oh, what does coefficient mean again? You can look back in your notes and refresh your memory. Okay. So I would copy all those vocabulary words down. And then in the chat, if there's any of those that you want me to explain, I'm happy to do that. You could also look them up online. If you can't find them for some reason, you can email me and say, Miss, I can't find the definition of equation. It's in there, but I'll be happy to send you a definition. Or you could look and do a Google search and say, what is the mathematical definition of equation, or the mathematical definition of inverse? Okay. I'll set a timer. I'll give you about a minute to copy that. Also, the actual equation, so where it says evaluating expressions, I am going to do those with you guys. So just copy all the vocabulary, copy the first problem, and then if you're caught up, go ahead and try to solve that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. And then after each problem, I'll give you guys like a minute to try it, and then we'll go over it. So evaluating expressions, 2x minus 3y for x equals 5 and y equals -1. If you have already tried that problem and solved it, type your answer in the chat, just so I can see and be like, yep, you know what you're doing. If not, that's what I'm going to go over right now. This is way back from the beginning of the semester. The actual expression is this piece right here, 2x minus 3y. The difference between an expression and equation is an expression does not have an equal sign. Now, if we look, it says 4x equals 5. That's not part of the expression. That's just giving you additional information, and y equals -1. So the expression we're solving, no equal sign. Equations have equal signs. So with that, the extra information that we're given, the x equals 5, I'm going to take that 5 and I need to replace my x value, because those go together, right? X equals 5. When I substitute it, because those two numbers are next to each other, that's multiplication. So thinking way back, we put that, whenever we substitute it into parentheses and we replace the x. So we talked about, like, if I had a substitute in class, I didn't show up as well. I go away and then the substitute takes my place. Same idea. 2, and then when I replace the x, I do parentheses, but now I'm going to put 5 there instead. Then the -3 comes down, parentheses, but now my y value, y is -1. So I replace y with a -1. Okay, and at any point, if I'm going too fast or if you have questions, let me know. So once you replace it, now we actually need to solve it. So parentheses again, multiplication. So 2 times 5 will give us 10. And then be careful, always take the sign in front. So -3 times -1 will actually give you +3. And then 10 plus 3 will give you 13. Or you could take, you know, if you're using Desmos, you could show your work and substitute that whole thing into the calculator and you should get 13. Or you will get 13 if you did it correctly. Okay. Make sure you copy that down. I'm going to slide this up a little bit so you can still see it. Once you have that copied, go ahead and try number 2. And actually, let's put a little heading in here. This is all going to go into solving equations and inequalities from here on out. So I'll give you about a minute and a half to copy and try number 2. For number 2, first thing I would do, draw a vertical line through your equal sign. It splits the equation into 2 halves. Equation, remember, has an equal sign. Inequalities has a less than or equal to, greater than equal to sign. As far as solving them, they're solved the same way. So on the right-hand side, we want to, or wherever your variable is, so our variable is our letter, that's on the right. If the number is next to the variable, it's multiplication. So then you're going to use inverses. That's another vocab word, which means it's the opposite operation. If I read this, it's read y times -4. And some of you know how to solve it without doing this. So if you do, I don't care as long as you solve it correctly, right? Then we work backwards and do the opposite. So that the operation that's there is times -4. So the opposite would be divide by -4, or the inverse. So that's what I got to do to both sides. -15 divided by -4. If you type that into Desmos, it would give you a the decimal 3.75, and then -4 divided by -4 equals 1, but 1y is the same thing as y. Or because you need to make sure that you can convert back and forth. So if you're using your phone as a calculator, that's fine, but you have to be able to convert between fractions and decimals. So that's why I recommend using Desmos, because some of the answers may be written in fraction form. So if you use the little button or you're not sure how to do that, then let me know. But that would be the same as just positive 15 over 4 for your y value. So it actually can't be reduced or anything. So either one of those answers would be correct, or the format that they have it in on your test. So you want to make sure that you know those are equivalent. Once you have that copied, go ahead and copy number 3, and I'll give you about a minute to give that one a try. If you get an answer, go ahead and type it in the chat. If you did that one, the last one, so there's 3 and 4. So if you did number 3 and I said, yeah, that's correct, then go ahead and try number 4. And if you can do these completely on your own and you're confident and you know how to explain it and all that, then you're in a good spot. I would still do the review sheet just to make sure, but that's my recommendation, but whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, so I'm going to draw a vertical line through my inequality sign. So notice the difference between the two signs. There's only one additional rule that we'll talk about with inequalities, but everything else is the same as far as solving. So the first step that we need to do is we always look to see if we can distribute, which is one of our vocabulary terms. What that means, so normally there's not a little multiplication sign there. I forgot to delete that, but because the number is directly next to parentheses, it's multiplication. Be careful that you do not combine 5 minus 2 first, because you will get the incorrect answer, because order of operations, multiplication comes before subtraction. Really, every single time, look to see if you have parentheses, because if so, you need to distribute or you need to multiply first. So we're going to take -2, because you need to take the sign in front with it and multiply it by 4x and multiply it by -1. 5 drops down. -2 times 4x will give us -8x. And then -2 times -1 will give us +2. Inequality sign drops down along with the 25. Okay. Next step would be to combine like terms. These steps are listed in the notes in Empower. I would have those so you can say, oh, this is a multi-step equation. I need to follow these steps along the way. I have those shown in videos throughout Empower as well that you could look and refresh on that. So the second step would be to combine like terms if you can. Our -8x is the only term with a variable, so we can't combine that with anything. However, we can combine 5, with +2, because those both do not have variables, which then would give us 7. Actually, I'm going to put -8x down first. And then if I combine 5 plus 2, I get +7. It doesn't really matter. It's just I like to have my variable in the front. Inequality sign drops down. Now, from number 2 is a one-step equation. We jump down. This is a multi-step equation. The reason for that is because 2-step is used within it. So this step here, -8x plus 7, that is a 2-step equation. Once you see I can't combine -8x with 7 because -8 has an x with it and the other one does not. Now we need to work backwards using inverse operations to solve it. So my variable is x, and again, -8 and x are next to each other, which means multiplication. So I would read this as x times negative 8 plus 7. And then I need to work backwards, doing inverse operations, or think inverse PEMDAS. So the last thing in PEMDAS is addition, subtraction. So that would be the first thing I need to do on both sides. So the opposite or inverse of plus 7 would be minus 7. So negative 7 or positive 7 minus 7 is 0. Negative 8x drops down. And then 25 minus 7 gives us 18. Now, the big thing here is there was an extra rule that I told you about. With inequalities, if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to switch the direction of the inequality sign. Now, what I want to point out is we have a minus 7, or some people see that as a negative 7. We do not switch the inequality because we're not multiplying or dividing, we're subtracting. So make sure you know the difference between those. So I leave my inequality sign facing that same way. Now, in the next step, the next thing it says is times 8. So the opposite of that is divide. So as soon as I say multiply or divide with an inequality, I want to say, what am I multiplying or dividing by? In this case, it is a negative 8. So because that is a negative number, I need to switch my inequality sign. So I would do that as soon as you show your work right away and say, oh, flip the direction because of that negative 8. Now, if I solve it, negative divided by a negative will leave us with positive x. Negative 8 or 18 divided by negative 8 will give us, as a fraction, negative 9 over 4. And then I think that gives us, let me see. Yeah. Or x is greater than or equal to negative 2.25. Awesome. Okay. In the chat, let's do this really quick. Just give me some feedback. Do you have a question, or say, so write a question if you have it, or say no questions, or I'm following along, I'm good right now, whatever. Because then at the end, I will get like overall feedback from you, like, is this helpful or not? So just tell me right now, are you following? Perfect, thank you. Okay, cool. So I'm going to leave that about 1 more minute. Go ahead and try. The number 4 is the last problem that I was going to go through with you guys today because I don't want to overwhelm you. But I'm happy to do more after this if you would like, if there's certain problems that you feel like you need help with. But this is kind of an overview of everything we've covered throughout the semester. Okay, I'm going to scroll up, but like I said, if you need me to show you at the end, I can do that. So with this one, this one is solving multi-step inequalities. Again, same as solving equations, but it has variables on both sides. This is one that I get questions a lot, or this step is where I get questions a lot. Excuse me. So if we talk about this, you always want to simplify each side of your line if it's possible. So if we take a look at the left side, negative 2x plus 10, you're looking, can you distribute? We can't, we don't have any parentheses. Can you combine like terms? we can't because -2 has an x and 10 doesn't. So there's nothing I can do there. Same thing if we look at the right-hand side. Again, I can't distribute and I can't combine like terms. So 18 and -6x can't be combined because one has a variable, one doesn't. However, after you check and simplify, we should notice that we have variables on both sides. We need to move one from one side to the other, but you can't just pick it up and put it on the other side. So that's probably the most common mistake is they'll say, okay, -6, put it on the other side. You have to do the inverse operation to move it. So I recommend that you move the smaller one because then you don't have to deal with as many negatives. It does not matter as long as you get the correct answer. So I want to move the -6 because -6 is smaller than -2. The inverse of -6x would be +6x. So that's what I need to do because I need to cancel it out. And then whatever I did, so +6x, I need to put on the other side. And I need to combine it with the term that's the like term. So like terms have the same variables or don't have any variables. So +6x goes with -2x. When I combine those, oh, sorry, that becomes +4x. +10 drops down, is greater than 18. Now again, it's a two-step equation. You work backwards, doing the opposite. Our variable is x. We have multiplication between the 4 and the x. So x times 4 plus 10. We need to work backwards to get the x by itself. Our last step is plus 10. So the inverse is subtract 10 on both sides. Sorry, I feel like I'm going fast, so let me slow down here a second. So plus 10 minus 10, those are inverses, which means it would equal 0. And then 18 minus 10 would leave us with just +8. X drops down. Now, we subtracted 10, so I do not change the direction of the inequality sign. Now, the last step is times 4. So the inverse is divided by, so we say, oh, divide, I have an inequality, but I'm dividing by a +4. So because it's a positive, I do not switch the inequality sign. So like I was telling you before, I would deal with that right away and say, I know I divided, but it's a positive, so I leave the sign the same direction. Now 4 divided by 4 equals 1, but 1x is the same thing as just x. And then 8 divided by 4 would give us 2. Okay. Now, the last piece, because we did this a couple weeks ago, is you also want to make sure you understand how to graph inequalities. So you want to remember, like, what's the difference when you use an open circle, when you use closed circle? Is it greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, which way do you shade, all that kind of stuff. So again, if you haven't copied those notes, please do that so you have a refresher. In this problem, because there is no line underneath the inequality, we use an open circle. The line means it's equal to. So equal to means fill it in. No line underneath means leave it open. So when I say line underneath, I mean like that. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, set up our number line. I'm going to use an open circle, so it means any values, but it does not include 2. And then if I read that, it's x is greater than 2. Greater than means we would shade to the right. Because on a number line, your numbers go bigger to the right, and then as you go to the left, your numbers get smaller. I know this was a lot. This is probably the most I've given direct instruction in a row to a lot of you because I wanted to do a review. Once you are done copying, please in the chat, and you're not going to hurt my feelings at all. It's just so I can kind of get an idea of how you're feeling. So give me a little bit of feedback just so I kind of get an idea. You feel ready for the test? Was this helpful? Do you need more help? This was everything that I was going to go through for today. I would recommend that you work on the review sheet between now and Wednesday. And if you're finding that you need help, come to that session on Wednesday. I'll go through any or as many of the problems that you would like me to. You can set up an individual meeting with me if for some reason that time doesn't work. I will record that session and send that out afterwards. If you have both, I think math and literacy are at the same time. So if you have to go to a help session for literacy. One last thing for all of you, if you have not gone through the Empower activities and copied the notes, I strongly recommend it because the unit test is open notes. So get your resources together so you feel good and you feel confident going into the test, because once you pass the test, if you pass that this week, you are done with this class. And we can look and see if there's anything else that you need, or I'll say focus on your other classes. You've earned your credit for the semester, and then we'll figure it out from there. Okay? Have a good day. Have a good week. Let me know if you need help, and that's it.